Hello, hello, and thank you for joining us for today's SEJ webinar. It's one of my favorite days of the week. And with me, I have the team from Digital Reach Agency. I have Ben Childs, president and founder, and Jordan Gibson, head of growth. Gentlemen, thank you both for being here with us today.
Thank you so much for having us.
We love being here.
Yeah, so I think this is your first webinar, so audience, go easy on them. But first and foremost, let them know where you are calling in from today. So Ben and Jordan are here to talk about ways that you can break down silos within your organization and focus on a more integrated and holistic B2B strategy, one that fills your pipeline. And that's what we're looking for, right? We want that quality that comes with it. So first and foremost, I'm going to be your host, Heather Campbell, and I am proud to run the marketing team here at SEJ. I have Jonathan in the background for tech support with me. So if you need anything, Jonathan's hanging out back there. All right. So I'm going to give some go through some quick housekeeping, and then I'm going to turn it over and get to the good stuff. So if you need it, we do have closed captioning. It is the CC in the top right of your screen. You can give that a click. We will have time for Q&A at the end of their session. So if you have questions for Ben or Jordan, use that chat box or the Q&A to let us know. There is a little upvote feature. So if you see a question that you like, give it a little thumbs up, and we will do our best to front load those at the Q&A. And before we get off today's call, we do have a short post-webinar survey. If you can stick around, it lets us know how today's webinar went, how we can make them more useful in the future. So stick around, take that survey. And all right, that's enough. Ben, Jordan, I'm going to get out of here. It's all yours. I'll be back at the Q&A.
Thanks, Heather.
Awesome. Thank you, Heather. As you mentioned, my name is Ben Childs. I'm the president of Digital Reach. Founded Digital Reach about 13 years ago. We'll talk about kind of our journey and our founding, but really excited to be here and have Jordan here, obviously. We're here to talk about silos in your organization and marketing silos, especially in the B2B aspect. It really is some of the biggest problems that we see with prospects and clients that we talk to and work with. Silos meaning, and everyone knows what a silo is you have segregated data, there's not a lot of communication, you're on an island, you may have your specific discipline or focus that you're working on, but it's difficult to connect it to the organization. And maybe there's success on a micro level, but the macro level, you're not seeing that type of achievement. You know, the organization's going backwards despite on a micro level, these silos going forward. So we're going to talk about 3 strategies to, one, get you out of silos organizationally, and then I think selfishly, just make you more productive, more valuable, a better marketer, more hireable. And again, this is entirely with relevance to B2B. I think once you start talking about e-commerce or B2C, we get into some different problems. So awesome. Jordan, anything to add on that?
No, I think he covered it well.
Cool. So I'm going to talk about the big problem that we see. And people come to us with specific issues, like I need to fix my SEO, I need to fix my paid media. And many times there are acute problems. But I really want to plant the flag that the biggest problem that we tend to see, kind of the overarching of this webinar, is that people rarely have a talent or skill issue in a specific discipline. Almost always in a B2B organization, it's going to be some type of mismatch in data, communication, or direction. And so prospect after prospect comes to us thinking that the problem is X, when it is almost always Y, a deeper problem that is more integrated into the organization itself. So we find ourselves being not only tactical experts, but from an organizational strategy perspective, a kind of therapist in a certain way, uniting everybody.
Yeah, and I think with that, you see that the prospect, their expertise may be in a singular discipline or specific domain. And while that can honestly be super helpful, I think that it can end up costing them a lot of money because if your purview is that to which you just kind of see everything through that single domain lens, everything can quickly become you're the hammer, everything's a nail. And so it's helpful to be able to think in terms of being able to transition to a more comprehensive look at the way that you do marketing. Sometimes the fix is outside of what your purview is. So we're going to cover some of those problems and outline, like Ben had said, the 3 things that will help companies to be able to get on the same page.
Yeah, and I want to emphasize when Jordan says the solution to the problem, we're here to talk about business outcomes. We're here to provide value to B2B businesses. So you could be an agency, you could be in-house, you could have a single discipline, you could be a overall strategist consultant. Our goal is to provide value to B2B businesses. And so when we talk about solving the problem, we're simply talking about providing value to the business. And wherever you are, kind of in that stack or in that universe, as we'll go into, the goal is to just leave things better than you found it and get more revenue, and connect the dots, as we'll talk about. So how did we get here? So I founded Digital Reach 13 years ago in July, like I mentioned, as a paid media and SEO company. And we started on a very tactical level. And we took a little bit of a journey, I should say. So we started doing paid media and SEO. Like many people, we found that we were being hindered by clients' websites, by their ability to implement code and make changes. So we brought on a web developer and began our web development team. We found that we were getting into larger and larger meetings with B2B CMOs at Series C startups and unable to actually talk about the value that we were providing. So we began adding attribution and business intelligence along the way. We found that some of that data was not fantastic, and we dug into some of the issues, even though we felt like we were doing a great job, and realized that we needed to get into marketing automation and CRM and really begin kind of getting a larger approach to what we're doing versus just trying to drive conversions, just trying to improve keyword rankings. And then eventually we decided that we actually needed to start from the beginning, not just the end, and get into brand. And so for us, this has been our sort of journey. And I don't want to say being like a full service agency, but really I would say like solving clients' problems. And again, getting those business outcomes and helping them in the best way possible. There's just been so many examples, and we'll go into a couple of them, where the next ad rotation, the next page title change isn't going to move the needle in terms of them hitting their Q4 goals or what they want to be as an organization. We've put our decade plus of hard-earned lessons into developing an approach to solve this issue with a couple offerings. We have what we call a roadmap, which is a quick 4-week tactical diagnostic just among these different disciplines. And then we have what we call the blueprint, which is more of a 3-month intensive go-to-market orchestration plan. And we built these because this is actually the Google Trends search for go-to-market strategy along this time. I would define go-to-market very differently than just marketing. In B2B, I would define go-to-market as essentially your entire organization just connected, meeting customers, meeting prospects, meeting clients, wherever they're at with whoever you are. That could be anything from podcasts. It can be anything from live events. It could be your customer success team. It is really the holistic representation of the business you work with to the outside world. So we are kind of post, I'm not saying we're post channel. Channels obviously matter, but it all has to work together for a consistent whole of your representation of your business to the outside. And the reason is in this process where we started adding these things, B2B marketing has become more holistic and more connected because now touches are increasing. There's now 6 to 8 marketing touches on average in a B2B sale before people actually talk to sales. Buying committees are increasing. So there's an average of 7 people involved in a B2B sale now So it is not like, oh, I got this conversion off of SEO and this is a huge win, or they came off our paid media ad. It is now much part of a larger whole where you need to actually converse with sales and marketing ops and all the other people involved in it. And additionally, sales are coming in later. So 50 to, it depends on your industry, but 50 to 90% of research is being done before someone talks to sales. So sales is coming in later and later. And so I think the kind of simplistic aspect, oh, I got someone off SEO, I talked to sales, and we have one call close them. That is applicable in some businesses for sure, but in enterprise B2B marketing, it is significantly more connected. And it's just interesting that we took that ride at a time, really out of expedience, solving these small problems. Again, trying to connect the dots, trying to make what we do more productive, um, building our own silos in a certain sense to only realize that this is how B2B marketing is done and flip it and try and get rid of those silos.
One thing I want to just call out and mention here when we look at this graph is you can see the trend line of folks that are talking about go-to-market strategy. The longer the period of time goes, the more and more that begins to increase. And I think what you're discovering is that, like a lot of marketing organizations are discovering, is that this very single focused, we're just going to focus on one single discipline approach without thinking about all the implicating factors that may touch in some way, whether that's impacting positively or negatively, without just kind of giving any mind to any of those other factors. It's a very limited approach to being able to see success in that single discipline. And so I think you see a trend, even as we were starting to add on a service and add on a service, because it's like, oh, like, well, we need to be able to make sure that we can talk to and cover this service over here in order to make sure that we don't get fired at the end of the day, because we want to make sure that we are putting the customer, setting them up for as much success as possible. And it helps for us to be able to know what's going on in some of these other areas. It's our own way of how we've been able to evolve from out of our own siloed thinking.
Cool.
So as we kind of transition here, what we've done before is we wanted to be able to just kind of get a refresher in terms of how we've been able to get to this point, but also just kind of talk about the trend that is happening as organizations begin to focus more on go-to-market, or if you will, just all-encompassing, comprehensive marketing shift to be able to align according to the objectives. We want to be able to make sure that, yes, we relate with everybody here that's showing up on this webinar. We've been in silos. We understand what it feels like to operate in silos where teams aren't connecting to one another. So how do we move past that? How do we break the silos? And so those are the three strategies that we're going to get into now. The first being that all organizations need to be able to get aligned. And like we mentioned at the top of the call, a lot of the times this is a mismatch in data, it's a mismatch in communication and direction. So we need to ensure that we're first setting the stage up for a more holistic, more comprehensive direction of your marketing team. And that involves alignment at the top.
Probably the number one thing I can recommend to people on the call, whether you work at an agency or your internal, your in-house, is to really get familiar with the company's objectives and outcomes, is to really get familiar with the top line goals. It's largely customers, probably. It might be net new revenue, ARR, MRR, something like that, getting into a specific market. The more you can understand, and this can happen through goal setting using OKRs. It can happen through project management, like in Asana or something like that, however your organization wants to do it. The biggest thing that I can say is, whether you're in SEO, paid media, marketing automation, creative, web development, events, whatever it is, begin communicating what you do in the highest level objective and outcome that you possibly can. And it's interesting. Will Critchlow gave a really great webinar recently on securing SEO budget. And this was a really great point that he made, which is you will just be implicitly more valuable to the company you're speaking with or working with if you can voice it in their highest level goals. If they have a huge event in October or they have a yearly goal that's shared with everybody, as much as possible, if you can see the next ad rotation you're doing, the next landing page you're building, the next net new content you're creating as contributing to that and communicate it in that way, not only will you be more valuable, but you'll begin seeing the whole process, which we'll get into in a minute, as to how the whole process is getting the company to those goals. And you'll see that you have internal allies. You'll see you have people on your team internally, maybe people whose opinions you need to change. But just remember that the key results for you, so that might be keywords and conversions or something like that, are not always objective for the company, which are net new customers and revenue. And again, if you begin thinking about that, you can kind of get outside of the segregated data, the small wins of where you're at, which might be great, it might be awesome, but begin tying it to how the company actually works. We first do that, and by the way, this actually, I'll share a customer example in a minute about that. But one of the things you need to do, and I just have 4 quick examples here. Every company has different things. Some have sales accepted leads, some have sales qualified leads, some don't use MQLs. You're going to use whatever data your company has. I just have some basic examples here. Just begin ideally from the top, get stakeholder buy-in. When we do a roadmap, we have a big stakeholder meeting where we put everyone down, we sit everyone down and we get on the same page as to what metrics we're actually going to talk about. When we do a more in-depth blueprint, we actually have one-on-one meetings with every single stakeholder in the organization about what metrics we're all going to agree to be beholden to, and begin communicating what you do in these ways. Because once you do that, not only, again, will you be more valuable, but you will begin breaking down those silos in terms of how to actually achieve these goals with other members of the team, with other agencies, with other resources. So a great example of this is we were working with a client. We're doing paid media for them. About 3 months in, we'd put a lot of work into it. They'd spent quite a bit of money, but they weren't seeing any revenue. And so a member of our team actually asked them a series of questions, and we'll get into what those questions are later in the webinar, and got into, hey, what do you use for your data? And they used Salesforce, HubSpot, Segment as a customer data platform, and Google Analytics. This is an example where I'm going to universalize it to where you want to be more productive in what you do and to get out of those silos. Again, one of the biggest things I can recommend to people is begin speaking the language of like the universal data B2B. That's in Salesforce, it's in Marketo and HubSpot, it's in customer data platforms. If I can recommend one thing to anyone on this webinar, it is to universalize a little bit out of kind of where your day-to-day is and begin speaking on these platforms. Because the strategist on our team who was doing paid search for this, he had worked really hard for 3 months. We weren't seeing any revenue results. And he asked the client, hey, can you open your Salesforce? I would love to see how that's looking. Let's get out of the Google Ads platform and let's go into Salesforce. And they looked at the sales stages, and our strategist helped map out what those sales stages were for our client who's in marketing. And actually, we got to a place where they just somehow could not progress through. And so our strategist on the call said, hey, do your salespeople even follow up with these people? And it was very clear to the client that we're speaking with. Oh, he said, no, they don't want to follow up on the asset that we're using. No one calls them. They all want to do demo requests. So none of these are being followed up with. It just became very clear in the moment that, again, the next ad rotation, the next ad copy refresh, the next negative keyword was not going to solve the problem. It was a deeper, more holistic problem in terms of how this organization was going to market and how they were working together. We ended up swapping out to do demo requests. All those people got calls, and we got a positive ROI within about 6 weeks. So it's something like that where taking a step back and seeing how things are connected can sometimes really save you from pretty ruinous wastes of money and effort. And why we say that kind of the fundamental problem is a lot of people come to us thinking the problem is one thing when we look under the hood and we see that it's actually another thing. Cool. And I actually had the metrics and the data there. I did not switch slides, so that's fine. But I think you guys followed along. Questions on that? We have someone Q&A. Yes.
There is a question in there from Nicole. Let me pull this up. And so she says, I've asked my client for Salesforce data for over a year, and I still can't get them to share it. She has a suspicion that her marketing cloud might not be set up correctly. So what else can she do to help get to the root of the problem?
Yeah, that's difficult. I would need one of our data people to really kind of dig into what they've done there. But I would say kind of do something that our strategist did. This conversation actually happened in 2017, so this was 7 years ago, which is one of the things that led us to this journey. Is if they don't share it with you, that's okay. But I just think it has to be top of mind for every conversation where you either help them get a resource, maybe you find a contractor, maybe they open their screen and you walk through it together. But I guarantee you, if your suspicion is their Salesforce Marketing Cloud isn't set up correct, almost always the answer is going to be yeah. So that's tough news. But again, this is the type of thing where focusing on this, again, the next ad rotation, the next keyword addition isn't going to move the needle unless their actual systems are set up correctly. Cool. That was a great question. We have, and yeah, we deal with the data privacy issues as well. I think it's just something you need to harp on. I think it's just something that either you need to fulfill some type of data security questionnaire or do your due diligence as a vendor to let them know in a top of mind perspective that it is simply way more important than I think they're giving it credit for, and really push the action on that conversation. Cool. Jordan.
Yeah, so the next strategy here that we're going to get into is really moving from, okay, so now you've gotten aligned. You're moving past the silo. You're starting to open up communication between teams. You're starting to rely on the data to be able to uncover potentially some opportunities or gaps, similar to what Nicole was talking about. Now it's a matter of being able to get aware, and I'd like to think of it as like getting aware of your surroundings. So if you think about your role today, you're kind of at the center of this orbit, and you may be operating, and just by nature of focusing on a discipline, you may be starting out in a silo. And that silo involves everything that you do on a day-to-day basis to be able to do the tactics that roll up into your discipline. Maybe you're on the paid team, or maybe you're on the growth team or the brand team. And whatever that is, you're at the center of this orbit. So the thing that you really need to do is you need to get aligned and start to become aware of all the different players and all the different contributing success factors that are going to make you successful in being able to do your job. And this may look, for example, like let's say you're part of the paid media team. Well, you're creating all these campaigns and you're doing all this targeting, but you have some other things that are just outside of your reach. You may not be tasked with working on brand, or figuring out attribution, or even touching your website and landing pages, but you need to at least familiarize yourself with the factors in some of these areas that are going to contribute positively or negatively to your success. So for example, like in this little diagram, well, the brand team may have been working on a new hype video. Okay, great. Where does that hype video live today? And could this hype video be utilized in some new campaigns that we're testing out across our segmented audiences? Would this work to be cut down into a shorter length? Am I talking and dialoguing with the brand team enough to be able to know what's going on there and how some of what they're doing may impact our ads today? Potentially on the attribution side, well, you may be doing all this work on sending all this paid traffic to come to your pages, and you're getting people to convert on the forums on your landing pages. But suddenly, because nobody has touched HubSpot since the time that it was first set up, all of a sudden you have a big gap around how these leads are being managed. What's happening after I get somebody to sign up for a demo request? Is the sales team reaching out? What do those reach outs look like? It's good to be able to ask questions if maybe you're unsure of exactly what each of these other surrounding disciplines may have an impact on yours, on your focus. It's good to ask questions. Where are leads ending up? Website and landing pages. Are our landing pages today aligned with the most up-to-date brand messages that our brand team has figured out through studies? Maybe it's VOC research that they've done, or user behavior tracking on the website. Are they resonant today? And how are the pages that I'm sending traffic to aligned messaging wise with maybe the ads that I have on these, in LinkedIn or paid search, wherever you're driving in traffic from. It's all about alignment. It's all about awareness, and it doesn't just have to be, paid. It could be you could be in the marketing automation team, and it's being able to kind of have a sense of the type of attribution that you're doing. How are we attributing performance to revenue? From a content perspective, if I'm building out emails that are going to go out as part of a nurture campaign, well, do we have data to support the type of content that we're leveraging within some of these emails? And this is an example that I threw in here that we've actually encountered ourselves, when you may be one agency that's focusing on a part of the marketing ecosystem, but your client has actually contracted out another portion of the work to another agency. Well, it's good to be able to have communication, especially if some of the things that they're working on has a direct impact on what you could be doing. For example, messaging seems to be a big one when we're working with, in the B2B space, where folks just are not thinking of it in terms of a user focus centric. They're a little bit too fixated on talking about the product and maximizing all of the copy space to just be able to focus on the product. Well, maybe this other agency has been contracted out to do messaging. Well, have I reached out to them for new updated messaging guidelines? The ability for you to be able to think in terms of, what are the factors, like how can I make myself aware of all these different players, and how can I establish communication and collaboration between us, is going to make you indispensable, not only for your clients, but for your own team. We're talking about career growth here, how to be able to think strategically, how to be able to think like a CMO, like a VP. I'm sure a lot of you that are attending here don't want to be don't want to be doing the one job that you're doing right now. You want to be able to advance, and your ability to be able to get outside of your own silo and make yourself aware is going to help you in succeeding towards that growth trajectory. But
and one of the
go for it, Ben.
I was going to say one of the things I challenge everyone to do is for a specific client you're working with or for your in-house company, try and put the user journey and the whole marketing stack down on paper. Not so much to learn about user journeys, but to actually get out of the silo that you're working in and see where all the touch points that you're involved with are and the questions you should be asking. Oftentimes, again, it makes you more productive in what you're doing. Um, we did a blueprint, the 3 month intensive we do with actually a business unit of VMware. And going back to a previous point, we really followed this process of actually getting their team together and aligning on what was important. And everyone has these disparate responsibilities, these disparate backgrounds, but we got everyone into a room and we did one-on-ones with them and talked about what was really important. We then aligned on the metrics that really mattered to move accounts through. They were doing an account-based motion. We actually put up some dashboards around how we track that in these different systems that they have. They were using Demandbase and they were using Salesforce. Um, and most importantly, we actually just mapped out what what is the journey these people are taking and where are the touch points. And we were able to just make some small changes. And when we implemented Drift, a chatbot, as well as did some messaging work, some content work, and we're able to basically 3x the value of people of accounts coming to their site from form interactions to using our chatbot with more tailored content. And so that's something where like we just got everyone in a room and put everything down on paper and then whiteboarded kind of all how all of this worked together. And just doing that, you're able to see some pretty significant low hanging fruit. Hi, Jordan.
Yeah, I just want to take a quick pause here because I do see some questions coming in. So we just want to make sure that we didn't skip past anything that somebody had a question on.
Well, here's a good one from Claudia, if you want to take it. So, how to implement team collaboration and open sharing information between the whole company. So, any advice here?
Yeah, I'm glad that you asked that question, Claudia. We actually have a slide coming up here where we're gonna and not only talk about it today in the webinar, but we're actually going to give you a handout. It's the way that we have formatted cross-team collaboration. We have a set of questions, and they're really meant to just be starter questions to be able to get your teams collaborating more. But just from a very like quick, a quick hit here, I would say that the very first thing that you can do is just start getting your teams together. Start getting teams together that either they naturally work together or the disciplines are very connected with one another, to where we understand that they have an implication on one another. It's good to be able to get those folks in a room to be able to talk more. But as far as, okay, so once we get them in the room, what do we do from there? We'll get into that in the next coming slides and give you some good starting points.
And that's the only one that we have right now.
Not a problem.
We had one from we had one from Sebastian around attribution, and let's save that till the end. We can get into it after our slides. Go ahead, Jordan.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for the questions, guys. Great. What we're talking about here is, so you've identified that in order to be able to get aware requires you to start taking inventory of all the success factors that may positively or negatively contribute to your success. But then it's good to be able to zoom out from there and start thinking about how all of these disciplines start working with one another. And like I just mentioned, getting folks in the room together to be able to just kind of check in and give pulse checks on what we're seeing in this area of the business or what we're seeing in this area of the business. Sometimes just the act of getting people together in the room to share insights helps to be able to color in some of the lines or some of the assumptions that your teams are making. And it's important to be able to make sure that all the things that you're doing are anchored down into, like Ben had talked about before, those sort of overarching objectives that sort of govern the entire marketing ecosystem that your company, or if you're an agency, the client's company, is setting out for all the teams to be able to rally around. We want to make sure that we can understand not only what those objectives are, what we're being measured to, but also the underlying distilled, actionable, like, okay, here's the objective, and what does this mean for my team? Like, how can I put this vision statement that this company has in action in what I do on creative and UX? Or, how do I take the fact that we need to generate more conversions and show year-over-year growth from a paid media side, or from a digital experience side? It's to be able to not only just sit with those objectives, but ask yourself, like, what does this mean for me? And what are some of these other areas of the business doing in order to be able to color in between the lines there?
Cool. So we've become aware of different people who own different things. We've worked really hard to fill in the blanks and try and get kind of a more holistic view. The next step is going to be connecting the dots. And Jordan's going to walk you through kind of how we do that in our roadmap.
Yep. And so, Claudia, and for many of you that might be asking the questions, okay, well, we got our teams together. We're getting out of our silos. We're starting to feel like we have some holistic, more connected momentum behind us. Well, how do we now take all of that and turn it into the type of collaboration and communication that's going to uncover opportunities, identify gaps, make our teams more connected? Well, it's good to be able to have, again, a starting point for how to be able to foster communication. The way that we do it here at Digital Reach is when we get our teams together, we like to ask a series of questions, and we think about the different parts of the marketing ecosystem as divided up into three different parts. You have brand, and within brand makes up your brand strategy, your content strategy, the content that you're producing, creative. Then you got your digital infrastructure. I think digital infrastructure, you could kind of separate those two out into your data systems or RevOps and your digital experience. So the experience that you have, like we all know, on your website and your landing pages and all your web presence. And then the third is, from there, your pipeline generation. And so we like to get these teams together in the room. So, for example, we'll get the brand team together in the room with the pipeline team. And we may ask a series of questions like, for example, well, how does the messaging and positioning of our brand impact pipeline generation? Are there any gaps in our brand strategy that might be affecting our ability to be successful in the pipeline generation activities that we're doing? And I don't think I called this out before, but pipeline generation, that third pillar, is the way that we describe it would be your paid efforts, your organic efforts. And so you're having your teams ask, well, okay, this is the brand strategy that we've identified to be refreshed and resonant with our audience. Well, what about that brand strategy may have a contributing factor on the success of our organic efforts or our paid efforts? Or how can we align our brand voice and messaging with our pipeline goals? Then we'll get our pipeline generation team with our digital infrastructure team together, and we'll have them sit down and ask themselves, questions like, well, how are leads being handled in our CRM today? And what impact might that have on some of our pipeline generating activities? How can we improve our lead nurturing process to enhance some of the things that we're doing, all the money that we're spending to be able to generate pipeline through paid and SEO? How are we then handing that off to the rest of our organization? We'll also get our digital infrastructure team and our brand team together. And so we may be asking ourselves, okay, well, how does our user experience on our website and our digital platforms affect how folks are, how users are perceiving our brand. Are there any opportunities to leverage what we have going on with digital experience to enhance brand awareness and engagement? One of the things that I see that comes out of these conversations is we start to the digital infrastructure team that's focusing on the website. They start to get into the user behavior tools that they have set up on the website today. And they're starting to see how users are interacting with different parts of the website. And so the brand team is taking note of this and maybe following it up with either like a deeper survey, or they're taking these insights and they're marrying them with the messaging that they've been working on that will then get passed over to the pipeline generation team. So these are the type of questions that are going to foster that type of communication and collaboration. And again, all the questions, even the questions that I've just kind of ran through, they're going to be available in the handouts tab. If you click on that, in the handouts portion of this webinar, you'll see a PDF that has everything listed out there, and you can start using this for your teams.
Cool. Yeah. Where you're at, asking related questions about things around you is one of the best things you can do to improve the performance of a B2B go-to-market organization, because it's all connected. You find wins when you get there. And I think to put a bow on the connect the dots portion of the 3 strategies that we're presenting, to get you out of silos, become more productive, I have continued expanding, and this is 2 things. One is application and one is training. Application wise, we've determined our North Star metrics on a high level. I know, Sebastian, you have a question around how do you do that organizationally, get people on the same page. Ideally, we've had a discovery with the client or with our boss or the CEO, whoever, around what really matters to them. And we've put that down on paper in language everyone agrees upon and in a data system that everyone is going to look at and respect. Those are 2 different things. More and more, as much as you can, begin communicating the effect of what you do using those North Star metrics, using those large scale objectives, using what sort of the highest ranking individual at the company has said is important to them. And you will necessarily begin seeing things around you that can help them reach their goals and get better business outcomes outside of potentially what you're currently doing, but also in ways that make you more valuable. And the second thing in currently in expanding is B2B, you have to consistently be learning. There's a deluge of information. LinkedIn is crazy with, this application that I did with this that got me Y result. Just learning the fundamental data systems of Salesforce, of how marketing automation works, of how positioning works, being able to fill your knowledge of the universe, your knowledge of, to go back a slide, being able to just kind of connect these dots on how you should be thinking of these, even if it's not what you currently do in your job, is one of the most beneficial things you can do, because then you can start seeing these large scale insights that drive huge business outcomes. Then you can start seeing, the needle mover that changes everything. Then you become a much more valuable marketer in your career. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Jordan.
Oh no, I'll let you wrap up, and I'll
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, with everything that you're talking about here, and even while you're continuing on, I would love to segue to just kind of get a pulse check before we even get into like our Q&A section, and ask this question, which is, how many teams are communicating cross-team in the way that we've been talking about today? Give a moment here to allow you guys to be able to respond with a yes, no, or, honestly, we're just not sure if our teams are communicating in this way. But go for it, Ben. I'll let you continue on.
Yeah. Nicole actually has a really interesting question here. How do you tackle difficulties that big companies have with processes, meaning new ideas, and how long they take to get done? That is one of the things that we've learned is our job. Um, we started working with Cisco many years ago, and we learned that our ability to deal with these types of issues is a skill in marketing. I know it can be really frustrating, but this is a muscle you can flex and a skill you can learn of just learning how to deal with these large companies in terms of getting decision makers on the same page. Part of that is setting expectations. Part of that is kind of code matching how they work and learning how their approval process works. And the rest is just marrying the two and getting on the same page with how their process works. Um, there's you can't make a large organization just jump through the red tape because it makes sense to you. And this has been a frustration that we have with a lot of new team members, right? To set them down and just explain that working within an organization's red tape is providing value in and of itself, even if it might seem gross to the average marketer who can dream of something at 11 p.m., put it in GPT, and launch it by 5 a.m.
Hey Heather, how are we?
That's already Gibson.
You ratted me out. You ratted me out, Ben. Heather, how are we? How are we doing on that poll there? Just checking in.
Yeah, so we've got about 50% of people saying yes, they are communicating in this
Love it.
way. You've got 17% saying no, and 33% saying they're not sure.
Cool. To just wrap everything up before we get to the true Q&A, we went through kind of 3 strategies that we use in our road mapping and blueprint process that we do with clients, where we just get everyone together and talk about what matters to them. Like, I know a lot of questions are like, how do you do that? The real answer is, unfortunately, it's going to be a meeting with a deeper discovery. We talked about kind of getting outside of your comfort zone and seeing how the entire journey works in terms of getting out of your silo and how you connect to those so that you can actually make educated decisions and become more productive and more valuable in your recommendations. And then we referenced a couple of handouts that we have just around asking better questions and around when you do sync with the marketing automation team or the creative team, when you do these even cross agency syncs, becoming more valuable just in terms of how you connect the dots for either the client you're working with or your employer. Cool.
All right. That was great stuff. This is one of my favorite topics, by the way, is integrated strategies and, just consistency and really bringing the teams together. So this was great stuff. Thank you. All right, so we've gotten to some of the questions, but let's get to Sebastian's because I also love to talk about attribution. So Sebastian's wondering, how do you go about aligning teams on which data set is the source of truth? And how do you influence and explain this at all different levels?
Yeah, it's a deep topic, and it's definitely something where, again, getting to the highest level that you possibly can in the organization and asking the data that they want and the data that they act off of is really going to be the answer. If the CMO doesn't care about Google Analytics, you can absolutely use it to, in necessary ways to move whatever you're doing forward. But you've got to align with how they talk about things. In terms of being able to change that, I don't know your specific background or kind of what you're a practitioner of, but there's consultants, there's people you can hire to do that type of data architecture or that type of build out in whatever they prefer. But almost always it's going to be getting to as high as you can in the organization and just asking them, how do you want to see this data?
Yeah, that's a great point. And dashboards, if you can get them, right? All right, so Claudia asks, Any suggestions on existing software to help improve communications within teams? I know we use Slack a lot at SEJ. It became the new email. Where like everybody's on it, but that's how we communicate. So from you guys, any advice here?
I can jump in here. Slack is great. We use Slack a lot. We have gotten into as the more that we use Slack, the more that we realize that conversations themselves can end up getting siloed when conversations move from our general client channels, which aren't client facing, they're still internal channels, but then move from there over to DMs. And so we've actually had to do a bit of realignment. And also just fostering a culture of open communication, transparency, like valuing all of these things, making sure that folks feel like they're not going to get in trouble because they're asking something that they think like they could be judged by or get in trouble for. Like we have found that we need to align in terms of keeping communications rounded out with all the players present that could potentially but what somebody has to say. And so we found that Slack it's so easy. I mean, it's like AOL of today, where you could just break off into like a really quick chat. But it's helpful to be able to keep those conversations with the whole team's visibility on them. So Slack is great for just getting something started and up and going tomorrow if you needed to foster that type of communication. Slack is also really good too in the sense that you can connect your Slack with other organizations' Slacks. So it could be your team chatting with your client in a shared channel, or a shared channel with potentially another agency that you might be cross-pollinating with. It's a great tool to just plug in a lot of different communication channels together to have that sort of open cross-team communication.
I have two quick answers here. One is a software, which is whatever your project management or work management tool is, Asana, ClickUp, Monday. Make sure you have defined goals in there on a high level for the client or the company that you work with, and begin communicating using that language in that piece of software to where you bring everything back up to the highest level goal. My second answer to that is it's not a software, and it's very old fashioned, and it's putting a meeting on the calendar and having a sync or a check-in every 3 to 6 months with another agency that your client works with that's directly related to you, or if you're in-house, different pieces that touch different aspects of what you do. It's much easier to do in-house, to just have syncs with your MOPS team or your sales ops team or your digital experience team. But a 20-minute calendar invite that just says, let's trade information. What are you working on? I'll show you what I'm working on. Let's make each other better, is going to go a long way.
Yeah, that communication is invaluable. Well, with that, Ben and Jordan, we're out of questions. So we'll take a few minutes and wrap up. If you do have any more questions, throw them in the chat. We still have a couple minutes.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
I think Jordan's going to post a link. If you want to have a further conversation, I have a HubSpot meeting link here that I think Jordan's going to post, where we'd be happy to do just a 30-minute call talking about whatever issues you may be having.
Perfect. And I think that'll be in the follow-up email. So whenever you get your, we will send out the recording. I saw that question come through. We will send out today's recording and the slides, and we'll make sure that link is in your follow-up email as well. And there it is. Perfect. So book a meeting with the experts at Digital Reach today. And with that, I want to thank you both for dropping the knowledge that you did, for sharing everything, for answering the questions, and for, just being great guests here today. So thank you very much, Ben and Jordan. One last question. It's my favorite question. Tell the people where to find you.
Yeah, we're at digitalreachagency.com. You're going to see the link in the follow-up to schedule a workshop with us if you want to walk through a specific problem. Jordan posted just a 30-minute intro meeting link. So yeah, digitalreachagency.com. Ben at digitalreachagency.com.
Ooh, giving away the direct email. I love it.
Yeah, we'll see how many affiliate marketers are on the call. Spam me up.
Let's go. All right. Thank you all. Thanks for everyone for being in here, for listening. And Ben and Jordan, again, big thanks for sharing your knowledge today. So we will see you all at the next Search Engine Journal webinar. Have a great day. We'll talk to you next time. Bye, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Ryan. Thanks, Heather.